for being here at our first ever Agents Roundtable, and with all women, no less. So we just wanted to open up the discussion to have you discuss how has your job changed since you first became an agent, and how have you adapted to the sort of changes that have been, have come to you in terms of how the business runs. And anyone can open and get started.
Well, there's email.
Cell phone. Cell phone. Right.
How did you do your jobs before email? I mean, that's a fascinating.
By the way, who can remember?
I don't even remember that.
I do remember. I remember the CC because we couldn't just send a CC. So at the end of the day, as an assistant, you would go to the Xerox and you would make as many copies as were on the CC list, and you would run around and put them in people's inboxes. Yes, and that would be after hours. That was your little after hours treat.
That was like at probably 10 p.m.
And there were real pictures and resumes that actors used.
They don't use that
I
anymore?
don't think so. I haven't seen one.
I've been an agent since I was 22 and I'm 50. So I've been doing this a while, and it's hard to remember when we didn't have complete phone access like we have now, or the internet. I don't really remember. I had a pad of paper, and your calls were listed there, and your assistant came in and you checked it off, and that's how it was. It was simpler.
That's why you asked if we're going to enjoy our holidays, and the answer is probably not, because we all have our phones and our emails and
the
always
power
reachable.
of texting.
And what about how you're actually sort of making deals and what those deals look like? Presumably they've changed pretty drastically since the earlier days.
Right.
I think everybody's working harder to make less money, frankly.
But how does that
more
change
networks.
Yeah.
what you do and how you attempt to make?
I think we have to
whatever money
lower
you
the
can?
expectations of our clients, and because there are so many clients who have huge quotes from the good days, whether in film or TV, and now you just go in, you make the best deal you can, and it's really not about quotes or the history, which is a shame, but that's kind of what it is.
And explaining to the clients the changing marketplace and how those deals work, and
Yeah, I mean, that's a
When they'll-
huge part of it. It's just managing expectations because it's not the same.
And they don't believe you anyway. When you say there's no movies or there's no
There's
money.
no back end, right? Because I deal just with the writers, with the literary, and we still play for the big back end. And the writers still hope that there's going to be a big back end, and occasionally that does come through. So in that regard, it hasn't changed much on my side. We just have more networks, we have more financing sources, we have more opportunity for cable shows to make money in an aftermarket where we didn't have that just a few short years ago.
And how much, I always wonder, how much contact are you having with your clients, let's say on a daily or
More
monthly
than ever.
basis? Yeah.
More,
How about
yes.
you, Maha? On a daily basis, how much communication are you actually sharing with your clients?
It's funny because I didn't have much to contribute to the pre-email part, but we're multitasking, so we're always communicating in some way or another. You're always sort of, it's maybe because we're electronically always switched on, that I constantly feel like this umbilical cord to what I do. So whether you're on the phone or on emails, it's a constant flow of communication, and it starts really early in the morning because probably a lot of us have overseas clients. I definitely do, and just continues on. But it also, because things are harder, I find that our interactions are a bit more personal now and meaningful in some ways because it's not transactional. It's not like here's your deal, here's the good news. It's really going through bad news with people.
And the
to
clients
get
are
to
more
the news.
anxious and needy, and they need to be talked to and explain
Much
what's
more
going
often,
on. Yeah.
I think.
How sort of in the loop are you keeping them, because deals can take months, maybe even years to put together. Are you keeping them abreast of sort of every step of the way, or do they sort of hand over all of that anxiety to you to sort of manage?
Depends on the client.
The most boring. Deals are the most boring part of it. I never talk about the deal. I always talk about like the creation, the concept, the idea, the moment when it occurs to someone that they want to make something. Deals are. Everyone always thinks an agent is like a deal maker,
but that's where you have to manage the expectations. That for me is in how much you parse out, how much information you give out in the deal making process, because you want to give some, but you don't want to give everything, because sometimes at some juncture you'll make them more nervous than you need to have happen. So that's where I have to be careful.
And each client is different. Some really want to be involved and are knowledgeable and savvy, and have a point of view about it. and others would much prefer to talk about the creative and not really be involved and find it actually boring and just want to know. They trust that we're going to get them the best deal possible, and they just want to know, after you've been through the battle, where we've ended up.
Sure. What's the piece of the job that sort of you didn't anticipate, that most sort of surprised you about what you're doing on a daily or monthly basis?
For those of us that started out before there was email and all of it,
You're looking at me.
no, I'm looking at all of us and not Maha. I'm looking at this side. It used to be that you went to work at, other than the phone calls, which would certainly come, but you would go to work and you were at your office. I feel like I'm much more mobile than I ever was. And on the positive side of all of this technology, it's allowed us a lot more flexibility to move around and stay in touch with our clients and stay in touch with our office, which I think is an asset to all of it. And I'm surprised by it based on what it was like when you used to have to be glued to your chair and make sure you were there for the phone calls and there for the conference calls and whatever it was. That's been, I guess, a positive surprise.
And now you choose plane flights for Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
It's so true.
Is there one part of your job that you really wish you could delegate to someone else? And what would that be?
Dinner meetings.
Why is that?
Because I like to be home. I like to be with my kids. I try very hard to balance the parenting and my family and my parents and everybody else and my husband and the job. I've always done it that way. So I'm fine to be on the phone till God knows what hour, but I don't physically love to be out in the evening.
Do you find your clients that's their preferred time to meet?
No, I think that they're fine. As long as I'm talking to them many, many, many times a day, some of them as much as 7 times a day.
In other words, you've trained them.
Yes. Yes, very well, yeah.
How about the rest of you? What is one part of your job you really wish you could foist on someone else?
I would delegate the flying. I don't mind getting to the place. I would definitely put someone on the flight, get me there.
You know what? Set visits.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Set visit. Because I always feel like I always feel like I'm in the way.
Isn't it? It's almost antiquated. I just came back from Toronto doing it. Yeah. Because you worry that I went to Toronto yesterday, literally for a day and a half for a set, and came back, and I'm thinking to myself, does he care? But just in case he does, I did it.
They all say they don't, but they do.
Or they'll
you
tell
don't
you
show
some
up,
other
you're
agent
fired.
showed up, right?
Don't come.
Yeah.
You don't go. Fired.
Right.
It's covering your bases.
Yeah.
Right. Looking back, what was the sort of, outside of being promoted, which I'm sure would qualify as this, what was the sort of proudest or most rewarding moment or day in your career? Maybe it was a deal, maybe it was a signing, maybe it was something else.
And there's probably more than one, but if one stands out.
Lorrie, say something.
Pass.
Exactly.
Next question.
There are a lot of money, and there's
How about in the last year? What can you point to as being something you're not necessarily the most proud of, but something that really sticks with you? It's like, wow, I can leave 2012 and think I really.
Can I
made
save
an
us
impact.
with this? I think why everyone's having a hard time answering it is because I think we have the memory of fish, because it's like one day the victory or defeat of one day just quickly evolves into the next thing. Everything is. I mean, it's great. Hopefully, everyone's keeping memoirs and journals and keeping track of
Writing a
their own.
tell-all book.
Yes, exactly. That you can never tell anyone about.
telling.
But I think it's because just as something amazing is happening, some other thing is just sort of falling apart, and we're, our defeats are short-lived, the victories are short-lived. You just keep going.
There was an amazing story in the business section of the New York Times. There was the corner office story, and the person that was profiled told the story of the Duke basketball coach. And one of the things that he says to his players is, whether you've made a great play or a horrible play, in that moment, it's all about the next play. It's like whether you've had Coach K, whether you've had a victory or a defeat, or you just stay present and you move on to the next. And I feel like when I read that, it was so apropos of what we do as agents, that you have to be in the moment, and you can't rest on the laurels. And so that, to answer that question, I mean, it's hard to answer that question.
Sure. Maybe I can put a finer point on it. What is the toughest decision?
Why don't you not?
I'm trying to really, because I know you have great stories to tell, but it's an overwhelming pool to choose from. What is the toughest decision you had to make this year?
That's worse.
Yes, coming here.
Our job is to be invisible, so I think everything has to look effortless, and like, I can't imagine admitting to a tough decision or acknowledging.
You just certainly won't now, right?
You just do what you need to do.
Yeah.
They're all tough decisions.
Okay.
But, yeah,
I think the
Sharon's right.
toughest is just making a decision and committing to it, because
And feeling good about
yeah, and just knowing that there's so many right answers, that means there's a lot of potentially wrong answers, and you have to just sort of put your imprint on things and decide what, who you are, as you say, be present in the moment and commit to that. And you may be wrong, you may be right, but
Do what you think is
Yeah.
best for the client.
your narrative keeps changing anyway. So
Right. In terms of, Debbie, you mentioned this about the work-home balance, and certainly this is a question that women get asked, and we're all fatigued by it, and I actually do try to ask it of men too, so just for the record. But how do you, with the mobility and with the constant technology and you can be reachable anywhere, how do you set boundaries for that? Because it can get completely overwhelming, and it doesn't matter what your home life is, you need to have a divide, and I'm wondering, how do you strategize that?
I don't strategize it. You have to be a multitasker. You really, really have to do that, because otherwise you cannot, you guys know that you can do more from your desk in terms of any parent meeting you need, or I was always on the committees at school, at the kids' school. I can do more from my desk or more driving in, as you guys can, than most other moms that I meet that don't have careers can do in a day. So if you have the ability to multitask, to do 4 things at once, it works out. At least it does for me.
And you have to prioritize. And if being home with your kids, your husband at certain hours, and you turn everything off, then that's what you do as best as you can.
We're all adept jugglers.
I don't,
And I text my children a
the
lot.
word balance, because this job has been the great love of my life, and so is my daughter, and so is my husband. So it's like I get so much joy out of each of them that I would be happy
But you
doing
have to
all
have
of
a
it
spouse.
24 hours a day.
You have to
So-
have a spouse that understands this, because your phones do ring, and they ring on vacation, and they ring they rang as I was going into the maternity ward. Your husband my husband was in the entertainment business. I met him when he was in business affairs. He gets this. But if I was married to someone who didn't, I would be always tense that I was going into his time. My phone calls were interrupting our life. But my husband, understands that at least.
I think working mothers are the most probably efficient people on the planet. And my husband always says to me, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. And it's true. You just figure it out. You just, I was stressed when I was pregnant. I thought, how am I going to do this? Yeah. And you just do it. And it's, I think it isn't, there aren't boundaries necessarily, but I think a very rigid schedule, which I think I said in one of my interviews, I think a rigid schedule, is definitely helpful, and you have to be flexible within it, because, I'm not going to drop an S word, but stuff happens.
You also have to have partners who are like-minded. I've always had that. And who whether it's a man or a woman who
You're talking about business partners.
Right, who understand this and are okay with it. Because if you don't, I don't know what that would be like. I couldn't work in that environment. Right. But all these people here prove that you... Maha, do you have kids? Are you even married?
No.
Okay, well...
She's 13.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
With pink hair.
She was born after email.
Anyway, they all prove that you can do it. Right.
What about the advice, the sort of best piece of professional advice that you guys have received and hopefully put into practice?
I always say the best piece of advice that somebody gave me was the worst advice, honestly, which was I once got fired from a job when someone said to me, you would be better off selling cosmetics at Neiman Marcus. And it was the thing.
You would be great at it.
I would be great at it, by the way. But it was the moment, and I was young. I was in my 20s, and I wasn't necessarily focused or great at my job at that time. But it was the moment that it crystallized for me this sort of fire in my belly to prove this person wrong. It really motivated me. So it was the biggest motivator in my life to get me focused and to prove that I could do something that this other person didn't believe I could do. It was also a moment in time also. It was a guy who said it to me, and it made me sort of, it was also the moment that crystallized for me a sort of sisterhood, like you would never say that to a guy.
Right.
It's so demeaning.
Right.
But it was definitely a crossroads in my life.
Have the rest of you had moments like this?
Work hard, play hard. Like do this to the fullest, but enjoy your life. And that's so when you have those moments when you can go away for a week and really just enjoy yourself and have fun and be at a great hotel and be with your family. It's great. But listen, we all are people who take this incredibly seriously and do it as hardcore as anybody. And so it's just,
And we're obviously self-motivated, and these young people trying to come up in the agency world, and they all are waiting. Well, I've been here 2 years. When am I getting promoted? It's like, well, you're not, But they just have to assume the position and take it on and start doing it, and not wait for someone to give them a title, a position. And I think that's the best advice I got, and I give to others.
Sure. I got funny advice.
Yes.
I actually responded in the interview about it, but I thought it was worth bringing up. Nick, our old conciliary, he told me once that you have to shower with the client, and that's why I'm saying it's the best and worst advice, because hopefully, no, I didn't take it literally, but he just meant like to really be great at it, you had to be always thinking and always ahead and always like at moments that were inappropriate, be like, what would be the next step, or what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? Like basically encouraging my OCD. But I've never forgotten it, probably because it was so like, are you kidding me, right? But
well, showering with the clients a bit much.
yeah.
It depends who your clients are.
Yeah.
You can make exceptions.
Yeah. You won't forget that though.
No,
true.
I'm thinking about it right now.
I think the best advice I've received, and I give this to all our trainees, is to self-educate, because I don't think that you can be an agent in 2013 going forward unless you are an expert in many different areas. You can't just be a lit agent anymore going forward, or a talent agent. You have to be able, and you don't go to university for that. You have to self-educate, whether that means as a trainee, you're taking home contracts and you're reading the boilerplate of contracts, or you're reading scripts when you're a talent agent. I was told that a long time ago, actually, by a gal that was at CAA many years ago. And I make sure that all the younger agents coming up, or the trainees coming up, figure that out too.
One of the things you brought up is being on the sort of receiving end of being fired, if you will. Obviously, one of the realities of this business is clients come and clients go. When clients decide to leave, I mean, how do you sort of handle that conversation?
With them, or with our kids, or with
both, perhaps. I mean, is it with both? I mean, how do you sort of come to terms with that?
I just have a philosophy, which is when one door closes, another opens. It's just very simple.
Well, I mean, is it an emotional conversation with the client? Or are you
Depends
stoic?
on the client.
Depends on the relationship,
Right.
and yeah.
I mean, you try to obviously keep them, but you have to really try hard to be gracious. It will do you no good. I mean, a lot of the guys that I work with, I listen to them, and they are more emotional than I will be, and there's phones hanging up, and there's yelling or whatever, or letter writing. You have to try very hard, at least for me, to be as gracious as you can, because
I can't be gracious.
If you've showered with the client, it's really hard when they leave to be gracious.
It's harder to sever that.
Yeah.
How about you, Sharon? Have you had a moment where you've...
I just feel like if someone doesn't want to be represented by me, it's fine.
There's not a lot of room for discussion after that.
Yeah.
But there has to be. I mean, anger and frustration. I mean, in many cases. Really? No, you don't feel anything?
Yeah, I mean, I literally feel nothing. No, I honestly, I do something really specific. I feel like I do it really well, and if they feel like they're better served elsewhere, then I wouldn't be passionate about them anyway. So
I mean, I'm at that place as well. We've been doing it long enough, and you're right. We do bring something very unique to the table, and if it's not good enough or right for them, then go somewhere else. You know.
Okay, for my clients who are listening, I'm not at that place.
No, it's like there was a study or something, like NASA did this study about how astronauts in a ship, like they all had to take a personality test to be, to make sure each astronaut was like-minded. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be a successful mission. And I always feel like with my clients, there's that connection or like-mindedness that we're going to win. We're going to be crazily successful, but it's because we have similar taste or we have similar energy. So if someone doesn't feel that, then it would be.
It's like dating someone.
A failed mission.
Right.
If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be.
No, you're partnering with these people, so there does have to be a shared vision, and if someone wants to deviate, they want to deviate.
Blair,
happens.
Oh, go ahead.
Is there more, are you feeling more of that sort of pressure to maintain these clients and thinking about potential defections now than perhaps 10 years ago?
I think it's always, it's always been there. It's always there.
The only difference is that 10 years ago there were more boutique agencies, and they seem to have vanished for the most part. So it's really just 6 larger agencies or 7 larger agencies. So it is a little more difficult, I think, because there were more places a client could go, and so you thought maybe now there's just 7 big ones, and it gets a little tense sometimes. But we don't take up too much time in the day thinking about it.
I'm curious, what is a trend in the business, either on the content side, on the business side, that is most worrying to you, that you think is really either a threat to the quality of work you can do, threat to the quality of content that's being created either in TV and film? What is something that's kind of,
The future.
just generally the future?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably something you have no direct control over, but maybe something that kind of like, cuts into your day sometimes that you think, gosh, this could mount and sort of become an issue, 10 years down the line.
Weird thing where the biggest threat might be the greatest opportunity. And, as long as you're staying current, you like that? Okay, good. As long
Great
as
politician over here, I love it.
But it's true. I mean, as long as, it's ever changing. Our jobs as agents are to stay in front of it and to be as equipped and knowledgeable about whether it's, different revenue streams, different sources of distribution, different financing opportunities. I mean, they're always changing. And so it demands of us that we do our homework and go out and meet these people and, bring the information back to our clients.
How much time do you think you spend kind of imparting a lot of this? Because there's probably a lot of education, especially like, digital content, all the stuff that everyone's kind of like slowly accepting as the future.
It just depends on the client again. Some clients are just really happy being creative and being in their creative little vortex and wanting us to just help them figure out how to take whatever they've created and get it out there. Yeah. Other clients are incredibly savvy, want to know about want to know these different financiers, want to have relationships with them. And so it just really depends on the client, is the truth.
When you look at these different opportunities out there, I mean, Netflix as an option for a series. Do you have clients that sort of want to be in those spaces or are terrified of?
No,
intrigued by it.
Yeah,
Intrigued.
They're not quite sure how it works. They're not quite sure how to monetize it, nor am I.
I was about to say, neither is anyone.
At the moment, but they're intrigued because it's another avenue for them. It's another opportunity to get their stuff out, and they'll take full advantage of that. So
the
we're
Netflix
intrigued.
stuff is actually really interesting. So
Amazon,
if
Hulu.
there's something that's interesting, if it's creative, if it says something, then you have to explore it.
Well, especially when big names are taking risks in that
Absolutely.
space.
Absolutely.
Listen, some of these jobs, I have more clients that would like to see some of their product go to graphic novel. Graphic novel will pay you about $2, but they love the idea of having their product done that way, and then we'll flip it back into for me in television. They like those opportunities. I didn't see that 10 years ago. It was sort of the obvious 10 years ago with the networks, but now they want to take it. Maybe we'll do something with Hulu. Maybe we'll do something in a graphic novel space. It's not so much driven by the dollar up front, because they think at the end it'll circle back to them, and if it's the content would be on television or wherever, they'll make their money. But they do want to take those chances.
And I'm curious, is there, we'll call it a mistake, perhaps a blunder that you made early on in your career as a young person that you sort of consistently recall and continue to learn from? Something that really sticks in your mind when you were starting out as like, wow, I'll never do that again type situation?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, I sent an email once when I was an assistant to my second assistant saying not to bother me because I was really hungover and taking a nap under my desk, and he forwarded it to the whole agency.
Oh.
So that was probably a huge blunder, but also career defining.
For that second assistant.
Yeah.
Who was it?
And the rest of you, anyone
sleep
else?
is important.
So you wouldn't repeat the email, but you would repeat maybe the...
Right, she just wouldn't send the note out.
Yeah,
She-
exactly.
How did you even, what was the sort of aftermath of such an email?
Nothing, yeah. I mean, I was still me
Walking
then.
through the hallways, are you kidding?
Yeah. No one was going to say anything, even at that point, yeah.
Does
She
anyone
was
else
like, you know.
remember anything of that ilk?
I mean, I didn't start out as an agent. I came in as an agent, and so I think the consistent mistake I made through my 20s was not being persistent, not staying in something long enough. It's somebody else shared the same advice that they give to the young people who want to get promoted quickly. I was just antsy, you know, and if I could do it all over again, I would have stayed at the agency where I started. I would probably be a lot, I don't know, maybe a lot more successful financially. But I jumped around a lot. And so what I try and tell these young people is to really just stay rooted, don't get distracted, stay focused, because in my 20s, I was so distracted and so ambitious in not the right way, probably.
Anyone else have a good?
No mistakes?
Oh, sure. There are plenty of mistakes, but yeah.
To last forever and ever.
We all have big mouths. We made mistakes.
Self-editors, that's a very good skill you learned. I'm curious, what do you think generally is the biggest misconception about what agents actually do? Either in the business, outside, I mean, you know, these prototypical characters we see in movies. It's all accurate?
No, I think the biggest...
I think of the average person, I don't think actually gets the minutia
they
of
don't,
what you're
they
dealing
don't
with
understand
on a daily
how
basis.
important you are to the success of that show or that movie. They really do think you're just, I mean, the layperson thinks that you're just a deal maker.
Right.
They don't understand that you're finding the talent,
Packaging.
nurturing the talent, packaging, potentially, not always, but potentially how much you have to do with that, you know, success.
Yeah, I mean, the one, it's not really about what we do, but it's, you know, when a client has a big hit or gets really successful, somehow it's always perceived that it's been an overnight success.
Of course, right.
And we've been in the trenches with them 8 years, 10 years, 12, whatever
Right.
it is. And so I feel like it's less a misconception about what we do, but more about that sort of
Who's
funny
responsible
little,
for the success, essentially?
and how quickly it came.
Right.
And people who don't know the business think it's a fantasy job. It's like, oh my God, that's the best job ever. You get to talk to movie stars and go to premieres, and it's like, it's really not that fun, actually. You know.
But I'm still, I actually, after, I've been an agent at my company for almost 16 years now, and weirdly, I still have, you know, my husband always says, like, do you really love what you do? I really do. I still get starstruck around certain filmmakers that so impressed me when I was like a kid.
Right.
So there is still,
In case any clients are reading this, I still love what I do, but it's not a fantasy. I mean, it's hard work.
Right. It's hard work. But if you, when I look at the world through my weird lens, there's nothing else. I mean, this is such a great job in the scheme of, like, you know, I have family in Florida and they do what they do and they're in their jobs.
Right.
When I describe my day to them, it still feels glamorous to me in its description.
There's
you
nothing
know?
else I'd rather be doing.
I love it.
Yeah, let's recap. No, because it's like 20 jobs in one. You know,
There's some
every
things that
day
are not
you're-
glamorous
yeah.
and horrible,
Yeah.
but there are some things that are amazing. And there are things that are terrible about our
just-
job.
and just
like
tedious.
anything.
And
There's something
stress.
terrible
I can't
about
imagine
every job,
stress.
But
right?
you know, but every so often, you get thanked. You know, I noticed it more. I got a great picture from. I represent Mark Cherry, and when Mark Cherry came to me, he had a little sitcom script that was Desperate Housewives. That was a sitcom, and we married him with another client of ours to turn into this. And he sent me a picture the other day in a beautiful Tiffany frame of a picture of himself in front of his condo 10 years ago in North Hollywood. Before Debbie, and then one after that. You never get things like this.
That's nice.
So
Was he
every so-
firing you?
No. I got a little nervous. Right. But you get, you know, that doesn't happen too often, and we don't expect it, you know. But you
Because it's
every
never
year-
about us, and they
it
never
never.
look at
But
it
you
that
know, when
way.
I see it more at the Emmys or wherever they get up there, and they will remember to throw in, which is kind of nice.
Do you have any other moments like that, the rest of you? Publicly? Or public thanks?
The Kings who created The Good Wife, and they usually are pretty generous about talking about their agency and
Yeah.
you know how it got started. So that would be my most
Excellent show.
excellent. Not nominated for best show this year.
All cable this year.
Okay.
Tough.
And the drama, yeah.
Great show.
Very good.
Does anyone else? I mean, is there those moments like that, whether it's a gift, a speech, a saying, a call?
Well, when Kyle Chandler won the Emmy for Friday Night Lights, and I shouldn't be saying this either, but his manager, who's a good friend of mine, Cynthia Pett, we decided he wasn't going to win this year, and why don't we just stay home? So, of course, we did, and we're watching TV, and there he wins and thanks us. And it's like, my first phone call is to Cynthia. It's like, we are in such big trouble. Get dressed. We got to go now.
Oh,
But it was, no.
We
did, and we couldn't
The
find
20
them.
years, the 20 years made up for it.
yes. But to be fair, that was a big surprise that night.
Exactly. But he was very grateful and thanked both of us, and we felt like asses, but it was good.
That's funny.
The one time I didn't go.
Oh gosh. Well, that's maybe the mistake you'll learn from sort of factor for moving forward. How about you, Maha? Have you had any clients touch you in that way?
Yeah, and I won't go into specifics, but just on a daily basis, you're right, being thanked or appreciated. It's just an acknowledgement of we're inside a game plan together, we're in some kind of journey together, and we're both appreciating and acknowledging what the other's doing, and whether it's public or not. It's so important to feel appreciated, especially if you're, if this job's pretty invasive, and
It's
and
even nicer when it's not a special occasion and someone just sends you an email that where,
Right.
Maybe you closed a deal or maybe there was some success. And it's just nice when that's acknowledged and your work that went into something gets acknowledged.
Yeah, and when that connection is really, strong, you feel it. You feel that you've touched somebody, that you've changed their life, and they've changed yours too. And it is personal, and it's so gratifying. And it's just, there's really nothing better than...
Keeps you going.
Yeah.
And the late night, midnight phone calls and middle of the night emails. So shifting gears a bit, obviously much is made about the fact that there are not as many women agents as there are men. And I'm wondering, I know this is breaking
I'm the only woman
news.
in my entire division.
What's that?
I'm the only woman in my entire division. There's 12 guys and me, which is terrible, actually, but it is.
Well, you may have an excellent answer to this question. And I'm wondering how much in your daily lives as agents is this a factor, if at all? Does it affect the way you do your job? Does it affect the politics of your office? And if it doesn't, that's great. But how, is this a reality for you on a daily basis?
Inside and outside, frankly, of the agency.
I don't know. There's 122 agents, and there's a small percentage that are women.
What would
And
you
we-
say is the percent, like 10% or so?
Yeah, maybe about 15, but it should be more. it's not, I don't know how to fix it. I mean,
Right.
unless all of you all want to work together with me, I don't
be a
know.
super
It's
agency
hard.
here if we got all
It's
these people
hard,
together.
and I don't know where the breakdown is. I don't
Right,
know
that's
where the
really my question
problem
too, is where does this happen? And it happens in content, it happens in women becoming directors. I mean, it is a fascinating sort of investigation of where do these dreams sort of
You
fall by
just
the
have to
wayside.
look forward. I just always think, I always start with clients first. It's never about us, our experience. Look forward, try to mentor the younger women, and
I never look at it as like, oh my God, we really don't have a lot of women until someone brings it to my attention. But we try to hire the most qualified, best people and promote the young people who will be the best agents, and it doesn't matter what their gender is.
I had a prominent agent, female agent I should say, tell me that it was harder as a female to sign clients than it would be for a man.
I totally
disagree.
If anything, I think it may be easier.
Yeah, I do. I agree with
Really?
you.
Because you offer, maybe it's a nurturing side, I'm not sure, but I've never run into that problem once.
Lucky.
It depends. It depends on the client, what their needs and wants are. I mean, you can't really generalize, I don't think.
And also talent versus lit is completely
Right.
different.
Right.
What were you going to say, Maha?
I was just going to say, I noticed that the men console themselves when we sign people to say like, they wanted a woman on the team, or he just really, and I think we let them think that or say that, and maybe some of that, I'm sure we've all, I know I have, and I'm okay with that. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I kind of feel like our power comes from being great at our jobs, but there's an extra power out of it, just being a woman and being able to express ourselves the way we dress and be a bit more individualistic.
Right, but we
than they are.
offer, I have clients that I literally will pick out anniversary presents for them to give their wife because they don't want to be bothered with it. They're not going to ask my male counterpart to do that.
Right.
And I mean, it's there, obviously, or go clothes shopping. I mean, there's a level of intimacy. That's offered, which is shy of the shower that I like to offer, and I think that's the superpower.
But it's also those
that you're
moments that
talking about.
really make a difference maybe between a real partnership and a business relationship
Exactly.
moving forward.
Sometimes it still surprises me that we're still in a conversation about the distinction. I mean, because in my day-to-day life, I don't feel the distinction at all. I don't feel it in my staff meetings when there are fewer women in the room.
Right.
I wouldn't
And maybe
normally
it's-
accept that there's one.
Yeah, except that yours is,
that's a
you
little
have a spotlight
glaring,
on you.
right?
That's
Yeah.
glaring. But in
Right.
mine, you don't feel it as much.
Right.
I feel like there's so many incredible women running studios. I don't know, I know it exists. I'm sure it exists.
Yeah.
You just look at the sheer numbers. But on a day-to-day, I don't feel it as much. And it surprises me when we get into these conversations that there's still such a spotlight and it's so prevalent,
Well,
you know?
I agree. I don't feel it day to day, but there is something wrong with the numbers, and so somehow, on an individual level, there is something that we have to take more responsibility for.
I just think it is incumbent upon us, especially, you touched on it, Sharon, about mentoring, the younger women in our company and really giving them some insight
If
into.
you want to get down to like the nuts and bolts of it, I just think that women in those types of situations, whether it be our staff meeting or presenting to a studio, there's a different way to get your way. And so the typical, idea of an agent is extremely masculine, aggro kind of thing.
Right.
It's hard for women to break through because we're not permitted to have that behavior, or if we are,
Of course.
you get punished for it.
Right.
So it's hard for, I guess it's just hard for women to come up in that and be able to shine without mimicking, behavior.
We have to do it a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's I think,
Right.
validating that for younger women, for
Yeah.
women coming up
Yeah, you
is
just have to
important.
show them a path
Yeah.
to success.
Yeah.
That
Because you have to define. Listen, we've all defined our own, and not by mimicking men.
Right.
I think
Absolutely
So,
true.
You also see, in these studies and frankly conversations, that on screen men still, by and large, get paid better than women. Why is that
no
the
one
case?
gets paid better anymore. So it's not even. There's no point. There's no point in that conversation. The money's gone.
But of the crumbs that are left, men do tend to get more. And why and how do you go about changing that? Can you change that?
I just think that it's not so much that they're getting paid less. It's just there are more men who are working in, let's call them the franchise movies, because that's where the money is, right? So there are more men carrying those franchise movies than women. And so if you break it down, it's sort of, do you know what I mean? It appears that way.
Yeah, but
However,
it's like
you look
when
at
you look at Kristen Stewart and Emma Watson
and Cameron Diaz on Bad Teacher, and I mean there are wonderful stories.
There's plenty of girls that
That's
are
right.
out in front
And in the
of
TV
franchises.
world, it's certainly changed where women are getting paid a lot of money to star in television shows. You know,
Yeah, I don't
that
think it's
world
such an
has
issue.
changed.
I mean, it absolutely. I mean, the TV side where there really are the opportunities. It's the director. I mean, certainly on the film side, it's the directors and the screenwriters. I mean, we were discussing that's really sort of the last sort of male-dominated corners of the industry. Curious if that's something you see.
I think that's changing. I do see that changing. I do see that changing. I mean, I think that female-driven content is more popular than ever, and I think that there is and there will be a much stronger balance moving forward, which is exciting.
But I think what's happening in our industry is it's a reflection of just society too. So you see the statistics and you heard it all over the campaigns that women supposedly are getting paid 70 cents on the dollar, to their male counterparts, which may or may not be the case for anyone at this table. Everyone here is pretty successful and pretty vigilant about what they do and don't let the men outrun them. But I think it's an interesting thing because what we do, again, which is why it's exciting, is we're kind of guardians in a way of the culture of pop, the conversation of pop culture. So bringing out stories that are, trying to find ways to get female-driven content out there more to prove that there's an audience for them. There really has been so much proof for it, especially in the last couple of years. We're part of that. So then that could, change the trend.
It takes a generation to really
the hottest comedy stars right now are women, from Kristen Wiig to Julie Bowen, from Melissa McCarthy to Lena Dunham. I mean, that's who everybody's talking about right now. I'm more so than Adam Sandler.
Right.
That's the wave that's coming up, and you only need one or two hit shows. I mean, Sex and the City did it, and then Desperate Housewives did it. Then it got quiet for a while, and now with Girls, it's back, full force. And so there's a lot more young women. There are a lot more young talent coming out of universities, whatever, who feel that they can get an opportunity, maybe more so than 5 years ago.
Well, it's also, too, Lena's a perfect example of someone, and Mindy as well, who they're creating their own content.
Yes.
And I think that's the shift.
I mean, and I'm sure at your agencies, too, a lot of the agents, a couple times a week are at UCB or wherever, they're out there looking, not anymore at the Improv or the Comedy Store, but at UCB, where they're looking for that young woman or the young man who's writing their own material, the next generation of Tina Fey. That seems to be the order of the day.
What's the best advice you can sort of give these younger pieces of talent? That sounds terrible to say, but like that. Actors, actresses, comedians, writers. And what do you sort of advise them to do when they're trying to break into
before they have representation,
this business, other than let me sign you?
No, if they have a voice, if there's some, in whatever way that is, then that's what you have to really help them find, is to have a point of view, to have,
Do you say write a spec? Do you say put something on YouTube, or
It depends who they are. I mean, if they're a writer performer, right? It just depends on what their goal is. But I do agree. I think the people who are finding success are people who really are distinctive and have a point of view. I mean, it's always been that way, obviously. But I do think you can be more different now. It's not so archetypal. It's really, you can be really unique and original and fresh and different and find your way. And I think because of cable and because of independent film and there are more opportunities for.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the most exciting, it's hard to give people advice because conventional wisdom isn't necessarily useful, because the people who are the most exciting, and a lot of the things you just referenced, are people who've broken the rules and shown us what's cool and what's new and what's different, and and that's so exciting. So you can't even tell, because they are artists at the end of the day. It's just our powers in being able to recognize when something's good and something's original.
And, go ahead.
What's the sort of craziest, funniest, insert your own adjective here, way in which you guys have gone about signing a client?
Or discovering people. Like you talked about going to UCB. Are you actively looking
presumably
for?
you guys have gotten
the
to get
scariest part to admit, but yeah, I mean, I've crashed a birthday lunch.
You have?
Passed off as a guest and didn't say I was an agent for weeks, really. So
Did it work?
yeah, I actually did, but
Pretty good.
I
Can you
won't
name
mention
names?
now. I don't know if he
Finding
knows.
out,
I don't know if he
finding out,
knows
you know,
my
if,
part of the story.
if you're having a signing meeting, finding out what their favorite candy is, or I mean, you know, there's all
Right.
kinds of like little customization.
Wow, did that work?
It did. It totally worked.
What was the candy?
I don't remember what the candy was, but we had like a basket, you know, and she felt like we went out of our way to find.
And you did. I mean, in fact.
You're not really gonna have to lower her expectations at this point, then.
No more free candy after that.
Yeah.
Candy, but it worked.
Or if you find out someone's gluten-free and you have the gluten-free.
Right, right. Do you go out in the world, sort of active, like Debbie mentioned, going to performances, or sort of clandestinely kind of watching people perform
All
or
of
do
it.
their art?
Oh, yeah.
You do.
All of
okay.
it.
Okay.
Because you never know.
Right.
You never know where you're going to find somebody. That's the fun part of this, you know? You never know where you're going to really, you know, find that special.
So let's say you come back from seeing someone, a sort of undiscovered talent, and to whom do you bring that nugget of information? Do you share with your
No, you hoard it.
Yeah, do you keep it? Oh, okay. I didn't know if you talk about it with your partners or.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I had a question that's very different topic. What moment, sort of in your lives as young people, was the most resonant of knowing that you wanted to do this? Was there a moment where either as a teenager or a young woman where you thought like, I know I want to do this thing. I don't know what it is, but I want to. We always hear stories of people saying, I was always a producer as a little kid. I was organizing skits and doing things, you know.
I always wanted to do this. I didn't know what it was, and I said this to the gal who called me. I swear to you, I used to do this every September when the fall issue of TV Guide came. I would take the shows
Right.
and I would transfer them to my school paper, you know, that big giant school
Sure.
paper. I was 11 and I have it in my closet, so it had 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30.
So cute.
It had the shows like the Waltons and I mean, what was I doing with that information? I have no idea. And I would have it. I was so excited. I'm
It
not
was like
kidding.
on butcher paper and your.
You know that giant paper with
Yeah.
the big lines? Yeah, and I would divide it up with my ruler and I would list them. Thank God there were only 3 networks, really.
Right.
I mean, obviously I wanted to do television. I wanted to be in the show business. I grew up here. My parents lived down the road, but I didn't come from a family of any, I come from a family of lawyers, so nobody was in it. So I had nobody to help me.
Right.
But I had my schedule and I knew my shows, and that was it. So
Great.
I did want to do that very early at 11.
And at what point did that kernel of inspiration take form of, I'm
When
going
I
to
was
study
in
something
college,
specific?
I went and I walked into a production company looking for a receptionist job because that was my only skill set that I thought I had at the time to talk. And I was hired, Norman Lear and Alan Horn and Jerry Prencio had a production company, and they hired me to be a part-time receptionist. And I met all these agents, and that I knew I wanted to do that.
So you sort of had the model
why I
of
was young,
what
yeah.
they were doing. Okay. How about the rest of you? I know, Lorrie, you were a big movie buff when you were young.
I loved movies when I was, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and then I worked for Joan Hyler, and I thought, this is cool, you know. This is something I would love to do. So it was just, and that's why I think it's again incumbent upon us to, you know, help navigate other young women, and because by example, like I have a mentee, a little sister from Big Brothers Big Sister, and I have her listen to phone calls a lot, even because she thinks it's really she's 16, yeah, but it's great it's just fun for her to like. Then you're also acting for them too, which is fun. But
it
it's
also
just like,
gives context.
But
to
hopefully,
such an
exactly,
interesting
exactly.
experience for you. I mean, I wish I would have been able to have that same experience. As
Yeah,
you,
me
for
too.
example.
I wish I had too. So it's just that's fun, and but yeah, it's by seeing someone who was really great at their job, and that was Joan.
Has there been like a pinch me moment looking back that you realize, okay, I've made it. I've arrived?
I have them all the time.
You still do?
Absolutely.
She has bruises everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
She's not pushing herself that hard. Just a light bit, a delicate pinch. Just a delicate
But are there moments looking back that you remember a game-changing moment in your career that really sort of felt like?
Well, I remember my first client was actually not a writer, but an actress by the name of Melanie Griffith.
We know her.
Yeah, and I didn't know what I was doing. I remember they offered me top of show. I thought that was fabulous. And I took it for a moment. You know, I didn't really know, but she and I are about the same age. And she was coming up and I was coming up, and I thought, you know, I've arrived because I'm handling her.
Well, she was already a big star for so long,
Yeah,
too.
she was a star, but she was adorable and very sweet, and she was very patient. But I really, you know, you get thrown in because I didn't go through a trainee process. I was in a boutique agency for several years, and so I didn't have that. So you just have to sort of do it. I felt I arrived when I handled her. Or I can call my parents and tell them that I was handling her.
Were there that's exactly,
One of the first deals I made as an agent was for Anthony Perkins, who was a client of the agency, and I booked him in some awful B movie, but I was so proud. It's like, Anthony Perkins, I got to, and I took the deal slip and I brought it to my grandparents' house and I put it on the bulletin board. It's like, look what I did. Right. You know, looking back years later, it's like, oh my God, what did I do? It was awful.
But she didn't take top of the show.
Exactly. It wasn't much more. But I thought it was a big deal back then.
Do you guys have moments like that?
I mean, they're not so much because I agree with Lorrie, you have them all the time, and they're, you know, and thank God you have them, because these jobs are such peaks and valleys daily. But I remember it for both of us actually when we worked together buying our first houses around the same time. And I was like, that was like, for me, you know, my mom never bought her own house. That never happened for her. I mean, it happened for her much later in life, you know, but to be 20-something, I mean, I never thought that was going to be possible.
In Los Angeles, buying a house.
In Los Angeles, I never thought that was going to be possible. From the time I got out here, living with my mother, you know, and then renting the first small apartment, you know, it's like, I would drive around and look at houses endlessly. Look at these for sale signs thinking endlessly. Remember, we would do it together. We would drive around looking at for sale signs, like hoping and dreaming.
Go to a million open houses.
I mean, a million open houses, like fantasizing about like what would it be like to like, right? And so when I bought my first house, which was at 30, it was like a real milestone.
Wow.
I thought, this is amazing. It doesn't need to get better than this. You know, it's like, so anyway, I felt like that was for me the arrival of rooted in LA, I own this house, I've made it kind of thing, so.
I'm sure many people in LA would agree with you.
I guess like we have the pinch me moments, and one of them was, you know, Al Pacino raised his voice at me once, and it sounded just like he does in the movies. And I thought, this is so cool.
Scent of a Woman style?
It really, yes, it really got that throaty and loud, and I thought, that is amazing. No, we made up.
It clearly wasn't having the effect it was supposed to have. You're sitting there thinking, this is phenomenal.
I know. But you do know if you're ruffling the feathers of a luminary, you're probably...
Yeah, I was like, wow.
I've done that. I have a better story. I can't share it.
I think we have time for one more question. You had the final question?
Your dream dinner party guest, dead or alive. Who would each of you bring?
It could be more than one person.
Hillary Clinton.
How come?
I've had dinner with her. It wasn't that exciting.
Oh, so now, all right, I'm changing. I'm moving on.
Okay, second choice.
I was a big supporter. I've met her, not dined with her, and I thought she seemed fantastic. And obviously, I would just like an opportunity to sit with her and Diane Sawyer and Barbara Walters. That's what I think
That's
would
your
be
party.
fantastic.
All right.
Power party. How about the rest of you?
Been there, done that.
How about the rest of you? Could be with us or not with us.
Dorothy Parker, Shirley Temple, and Judy Garland.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my
Whoa.
That'd be fun.
Crazier and
That'd
crazier.
be fun. That'd be fun dinner.
Hide the alcohol.
Yeah.
No, that would have been a great Wow.
Shirley Temple as a child or as an
As a child,
Oh, for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, I'd just be like, sing on a good ship, lollipop again. Yeah. So.
How about you, Blair? You look deep in thought.
I know. I'm trying to think. I mean, one of them would be Eleanor Roosevelt. I read a biography of hers, and I just think she was an amazing woman.
Yeah.
Probably the Queen of England, because I want to know everything about the royal family. I'm slightly obsessed with it.
Me too.
Okay, so I mean, that's fun, right?
I know, isn't that crazy?
And she'd have to really talk.
Really?
Right? She
Yeah.
seems like. I'm sure there. I don't know. I mean, that would be two. There are two.
Yeah. Mysterious women. I think that's the
Yeah,
key.
mysterious, kind of. Yeah.
I would have Helen Keller, Tupac. I love Tupac. Questioned. I'd love to see that.
The first time these people's names have ever been mentioned in the same sentence in history.
I can find a third one. Malcolm X and Gandhi. No.
Obviously.
I was going to say Kris Jenner, but I can't follow that. I'm not
We
following
need at
you.
least one moment of levity.
Exactly.
And how about you, Lorrie?
No, I think Billie Holiday, Martin Luther King, and Michelle Obama. I think she's. I think she's phenomenal. Yeah. So like
That's
from
a great dinner.
from that yeah from the really screwed up to the really put together, right?
Yeah. The whole scope of
Yeah,
human
exactly.
experience right
Yeah.
there.
One last party. Who's coming?
Kris Jenner
Just reality stars. That's it.
and Kyle Chandler.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm done.
Yeah. Kris Jenner and Kyle Chandler.
That would be
I actually would love to hear what they would say to each other.
not much.